Hey everybody and welcome to Chairman of the Board. Today I'm looking at a game that really kind of took me by surprise, called Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. And the reason it took me by surprise is because it is a game that is a kind of combination of two very distinct intellectual properties from two very individual companies. One being Stonemaier Games, who made games such as Scythe and Wingspan, and then you've got Bezier Games, who made The Castles of Mad King Ludwig and games like One Night Ultimate Werewolf. And that idea of these two companies coming together to make this game is very, very intriguing. The first game that is based on The Castles of Mad King Ludwig is a truly excellent game, one of my favourites. I've reviewed it on the channel, so check that one out. I think very, very highly of that game. And the second one is Between Two Cities. Now that is a game that really intrigued me because it's a game that you have to, it's a drafting game where you're trying to build your own city. In fact, you are building two cities and you're building those cities in combination with each of your neighbours. And the worst of your two cities is going to be the one that is your endgame score. That's an idea that very, very intrigued me, very interested in playing it. But it seemed a little bit too light for me and I just didn't ever kind of pull the trigger on buying it. So the fact that this game was kind of re-implemented as a theme that I really love and trust, it was a definite buy for me, so I did it. I'm going to show you how it plays, and then I'm going to come back and give my final thoughts on Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. Okay, so I've set up here for a 3-player game. Now, as you can see, I've got these 3 different throne rooms, and these rooms are going to be shared between 2 of each of the players. So if a player was sat here, he would share this castle with this player, and this castle with this player. And in the same, this player would share this castle with this player, and this castle with this player, and this player would share this one with this one, and that one with that one. So each player has kind of a vested interest in 2 castles. And each player is going to be given 9 of these room tiles to start with, and they're going to pick 2 of them, and then they're going to basically choose, everybody's going to do that, and once they've chosen both of their tiles, they're going to take their remaining tiles and pass them to their left, ready for the next player to take in the next round. And then basically everybody's going to reveal their 2 rooms together, and they're going to choose where they place each of these tiles in relation to their castle. So 1 tile is going to have to go in each castle. So as we can see, this throne room here, which is kind of your starting point, it kind of represents the ground level of your castle. So anything below it will be kind of underground, and above it will be overground. So as we can see, this one here really requires corridor rooms and food rooms. And this symbology here says you're going to get 2 points per every corridor room or food room that is above this tile. Now, I've just picked these tiles randomly, so these aren't going to score me any points. This one here, again, this one gets 2 points per every lounge room or whatever they're called, living room and corridor to the left and right of it, because as you can see, the symbology here is the white tile is the tile that this one is, and then the ones you're placing are going to be either of these black tiles. So just sod's law, I've drawn 2 tiles that don't actually score any points. But if I had placed one or both of those types of room, you're going to get at least 2 points, aren't you? You're going to get 2 points for one this side and 2 points for one this side. But at the same time, everybody's doing the same thing. So once you've got your 2 tiles, you're really going to try and negotiate with each of the players to your sides and try and choose what's best to score as many points as possible. Okay, so I've zoomed forward a bit here and given an example of after the first round. So once everybody's placed their 8th tile of each stack, they're going to discard the last tile out of the 9 you started with, and that's going to kind of conclude the first round. But I'm going to give you an example of how the game actually scores and how you accrue points. So as you can see, these corridor rooms, as I explained earlier, it's going to score 2 points per every lounge room and corridor room to the left or right of it. So I've done that, so that's going to get 4 points. This room here is going to score by scoring 1 point per every picture frame room that's surrounding it. So as you can see here, this symbol doesn't have one, this one doesn't have one, that one does have one, so that's going to score me 1 point. This one here is going to score 1 point per every connected garden room. So that's going to be anything that's kind of snakes back to the room. So that's going to be 2 points, because as you can see, this room here has the garden symbol because it's a garden room. So that's going to score me 2 points. This one here, the fish pond, is going to score 1 point per every food room in my castle. I don't have any in my castle, but let's hope in the second lot of drafting, then we would have that. Something that's important as well, these garden rooms, the ones with these blue borders, excuse me, I'm just trying to focus, nothing can be placed on top of them. So they kind of have to be the pinnacle of your castle. You can build around them, but just not place anything on top of them, because obviously you can't put anything floating in the sky. This one here again scores for any dining room, so in the future I'd look to get more dining rooms. This one here scores 1 point per every connected utility room. Again, I don't have any, so I've not really thought about this one too well. This one here scores 1 point per every utility room surrounding it, so that one's going to score 1 point there. The study here is going to score 1 point per every picture frame surrounding it, so that's going to be another shield around it, so that's going to be one point there. And this one here is going to score 1 point per every living room above it. So this is a downstairs room, so that's going to score 2 points for that one, because as you can see, there are 2 living rooms above the jewel room. So that's basically how the points are going to work. So once that's done in the first round, you're going to draw another 9 tiles, and then you're going to pass around the other way and basically do the same thing, trying to get as much points as possible. Something that is also important is once you place your third room of any type, you're going to get a little bonus. So if you place your third food room of a type, you're going to draw 5 tiles from the very nice insert box here, and you are going to draw 5 and place one of them in that castle. The living room, if you are going to, once you place your third one, you're going to place one of these little royal advisors into your castle, and they score points per each of these decorations. They'll go in your throne room like this. So from then on, I'd score 1 point per every set of swords in my castle. And as you can see, some of these, hopefully I've got one here. There you go. For every one of these symbols in my castle, I'd score a point. The utility rooms let you draw 3 of these bonus cards here, and they will score you points according to the criteria on them. So, for example, you'd score an extra 2 points for each food room in your castle. What else have we got? We've got the outdoor rooms here. So once you place your third outdoor room, you can place a fountain, which score you a straight 5 points. You can place a tower if you place your third sleeping room, and now towers score you 1 point per every room below it. So that's quite thematic. So the taller you want, the better with those towers. The corridors let you place a grand foyer. These very cool corridor looking things where you score 1 point per every room surrounding it. So you want as many rooms as you can to surround your grand foyer. And finally, downstairs rooms let you choose any other bonus out of the others. And another little thing, if you place your 5th room of any type, then you get to place any of these 3 rooms, either the fountain, the tower, or the grand foyer. So as I said, you're going to go another round of 9 tiles each, discarding the last one. And then the scoring mechanism is basically your weakest castle out of the 2 that you have an ownership in is going to be your final score. So you want to completely balance the kind of attention you're going to give to each castle, because if you neglect one, that is going to be your final score. So you cannot neglect a castle. So you're going to get a bunch of these scoring sheets, and you're going to basically one by one calculate the points of each room and calculate your total. And that's how you play Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. As you can see, these component trees are really, really useful, really, really nice. The tiles here are, although they look very nice, they are very small actually. I understand that because this game does take a lot of table space and can play up to 7 players, so that will be a hell of a lot of table space. And if they're any bigger, there'd be no feasible chance that you could actually get this played. The symbology on them is, although it's good, it's so small the way it's printed on here, and I've had players complain that they can barely read it. Personally, I don't have a big problem with it, but I have had more than one person say, how small is that? And they find it very difficult and kind of not very functional. The quality here, these tiles are quite thin, and I've had a problem with some of them fraying already. So not the best of quality on these tiles, but you do get a lot of these tiles. That's hundreds of these tiles. For loads of variability. These little castles that represent the where you put your excess drafting tiles are very nice. And these throne rooms are nice as well. They look really good. And I kind of like the aesthetic appeal to it, where you're looking sideways onto the castle. It looks really cool. But component-wise, a bit of a mixed bag. They're very thin, very small, not the best quality, but these trays are absolutely fantastic. So good for setting up and packing away. Okay, so I hope that gives you an idea about how the game works. I'll give you an idea how not to play the game very well, because that was a terrible example of how to get a lot of points. But you get the gist of how the game works. So, as I said in the intro, The Castles of Mad King Ludwig is a truly excellent game, and all my friends are very keen on it. We really enjoy it. But the problem was it was capped at 4 players. And I often have more than 4 players in my game group, and we can't often play it because of that reason. Now, one of the kind of main things that made me kind of buy this game is the fact that it supports up to 7 players. And, a game that supports that many players that isn't kind of a party game or a social deduction game is always going to catch my attention. The idea of drafting is always a great one for that many players, because the downtime is really reduced because everybody's playing at the same time, doing their own thing, and you don't really have to worry about what the players on the other side of the table are doing, because you're just doing your own thing with each of your neighbours. The drafting in this game does work really well, as any other drafting game does. It's a very elegant mechanism. And as I said, the idea of you having to balance both of your castles, or at least kind of make them as best as possible, the fact you can't completely neglect one and just completely pimp one out, is really good, because, as I said, the lower of your 2 castles is going to be your final score. That is really interesting to me, and it's always going to be interesting to me. I love that idea, that kind of classic Reiner Knizia scoring mechanism, even though he's got nothing to do with this game. There are 2 little things that I wasn't so keen on. The idea of you drafting both of these 2 tiles and then kind of negotiating on where you want these tiles to go in each of your castles, it almost doesn't ever work, because you have such a clear idea of where you want these tiles to go when you draft them, that you kind of aren't interested in putting them in the other castle. You just instantly just go there straight away and just place them. And also because the game encourages negotiation, you kind of like waiting your turn to talk to the other player, or something like that, because you can't talk to everybody at the same time, can you? So it's just a little thing that kind of hinders the game a little bit for me. Also the fact that you can, there are so many different ways these tiles score. Not only are you thinking about the ones that are already on the board, and how you're going to get points, but you have to kind of combine that with the one you're placing, which is really interesting. You're having to think about 2 ways you're going to score points. But again, the fact that there are so many different scoring criterias, which is ironically what I thought would be the problem with the original game, Between Two Cities, not having enough, that is, that it kind of is very hard to focus your points the kind of strategy you want to go for, because all these different tiles score in such different contrasting ways that you just kind of like getting a couple points here, a couple points there, a couple points there. I would have really liked to have seen those kind of huge synergies, which I'm sure you can do, but you'd have to do that at a huge expense of something else. And just, I'd love to have seen like big jumps in points instead of just getting a couple here and a couple there. So a couple of little niggles there. I'm sorry to get the review off to a kind of not a negative start, but not so of a positive start. To continue down that track, my favourite thing about the original game, The Castles of Mad King Ludwig, was the master builder mechanic. That was the kind of most intriguing thing for me, but I understand that wasn't completely feasible in a game like this. It's a drafting game. But I throughout the whole duration of the game, I was thinking, I would rather be playing that game. It's a better game in my opinion. That's an excellent game. This one it's decent, but it's just not at that level. And I appreciate that it's not going to be as in-depth, because it is a drafting game. It is a game that supports 7 players. But I have that niggling thing in my head where, is it worth me sacrificing the experience of the first game just to play with more players? I'd rather just hold out until I do have the correct player count, if that makes sense. But that being said, the concept is also really cool. I love the idea of building your own castle. I love the idea of having to work with your neighbours to do it as best as possible. I like the kind of visual appeal of it, because this one is not like a bird's eye view of the castle. It's one from the side of the building, like you've cut off the side. It's very easy to see where your ground level is, what's below ground, what's above ground. The thematic ties of having to place those kind of towers on your tallest pillars, and your grand foyers surrounded by rooms. It's very thematic. It looks really nice. All the rooms are very unique. I don't think there's any duplicate rooms apart from the bonus ones. You've got some duplicate scoring criteria, but they've all got their own illustrations, they've all got their own names, and it's very nice to see your own little castles form, and they all look very different and unique. That being said, it's with a game like this, I said in the kind of how to play section of the review that the tiles are very small. I understand why, because it's such a sprawling game at that higher player count. It covers so much table space, and you cannot physically have the large tiles in this one. So that they're kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place there, because they need to make them small so you can play it, but then again, it's hard to see. So I don't really think, that's not a criticism for me. It's something that other players have said, in my opinion, that the tiles are too small. But I can understand why, and I'm not bashing them for that at all. The game plays in a very nice amount of time. It's literally 2 drafting rounds of 9 tiles, one of them being discarded. You know, you're getting those bonuses every now and then by placing the 3rd room, but it's pretty obvious where those tiles are going to go. This game doesn't have the analysis paralysis as the original Castles of Mad King Ludwig does, or is prone to. I don't have a problem with it, but this one is a lot more kind of breezy. It's a lot more just choose what's going to fit best, and not too heavy on the choices. But again, you are making those meaningful choices. So it's got a good decision space. It plays in a very good amount of time, about 45 minutes to play a game of this. And as I said, it does kind of feel like it's a quick game. The balancing of the game is very good. I mean, I think all the different ways the rooms score is interesting. As I said, it's very conflicting, so it's hard to kind of maximize your points as much as you'd like to. But yeah, they are very interesting. They are very kind of, all the rooms score in a very different way, and you can choose to kind of do a jack of all trades approach, or really focus on 1 or 2 of those huge scoring criteria on each of the room types. The uptime is good, as with any drafting game. It does a great job of keeping players engaged through the whole game, and I really like that. Replayability wise, there are so many tiles in this game. There are literally hundreds of different tiles. So you're not going to ever get the same kind of feel to it. Sometimes you're stuck with tiles that you just don't know what to do with, which is really cool. You kind of have to make as much, do as much as you can with as little resources. But that's paramount with all kind of old drafting games. Player interaction. With a game like this, you'd think there'll be more interaction than what there actually is, because as I said, when you've got those tiles, you kind of got in your mind where they're going to go. The negotiation part of the game didn't really hit the spot for me. That being said, it could have just been in the games that I played that it wasn't really applicable, that I negotiated as much as I could have. It might have just been that, it was pretty obvious where these tiles should go, and there's no way I'll change my mind to take it from that one to put it in that one. So I don't know, just something that didn't really hit the spot for me, that one either. As I said, I like the look of the game, very, very a nice visual appeal. Theme, really great. I love the idea of building your own castle, fantastic. And the setup time is absolutely brilliant in this. That's something that's really worth mentioning. Those trays that come in the game are fantastic. Literally, you can just pluck all the different stacks of 9 tiles in the boxes and just get those trays out and get going straight away. The nice little wooden castles that you use to kind of place the tiles for the next player are really nice. They're all very different. They look nice, bright colours, nice wooden pieces there. And there are so many different ways to score points, which is a bonus and a hindrance to the game, because you've got that diversity, but it is quite niggly, it's quite fiddly, as again, scraping points here and there. Also, the scoring at the end of the game, while those score pads are really, really good, they're very useful, it does take a bit of effort to do it. And the fact that you're probably going to be playing this game with, different players all the time, it's hard to kind of trust that everyone's going to get it right, so you kind of have to go through each castle on their own just to make sure that everybody's happy with each other's points, rather than just letting one player kind of mark their own sheet and potentially give themselves or take away points that they've earned. So overall, it's a painful one for me, because I really wanted to love this game, and to be honest, I didn't. I think it's a decent game, completely. There's no complaint with the game. It's just not quite for me what I'm looking for right now. If I reviewed this game a year or so ago, I would have really rated it a lot higher than I do now. Maybe my tastes have changed to something a bit meatier. That being said, this game is going to have an audience, people who have players, groups of up to 7 players. They're going to get a good game here, one that isn't a party game, as I said, one that isn't a social deduction game. And players who really like the concept of the first Castles of Mad King Ludwig game, but weren't keen on that master builder mechanic, which I'm sure, or I know for a fact, that a lot of players aren't too keen on. It's a very controversial mechanic. Some people feel very strongly about it being good, and some people really hate it because of the potential AP that it kind of produces. But people who don't like that part of the game are going to love this. And I know people who really do love that, who like the original game, like this more. Personally, I don't. I think the other game is a league or two above this. But that being said, there is a market for it. It's very affordable, loads of variability here, lots to think about, a little bit fiddly, but that's just the nature of the way the game scores. The idea of it is fantastic. The way the scoring works, the best player's worst castle is the winning condition, is very intriguing. So that's my review of Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. Certainly a decent game, just not one quite for me, didn't quite hit the mark. So I hope you enjoyed this review. If you have, please hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.